Go ahead.
Isn't it easier to ask before you ask like Dave how many films he has of cats, before,
Sure, you can do it.
Then go through all this stuff?
I'd rather ask afterwards, purely because some of them they end up forgetting because they're not important anymore, and partly because the more you ask up front, the more of these are in his memory, the more of a task it seems to him. So my task at the beginning is to just get down to one specific context, which is so graspable that can be dealt with. You don't want to deal with all of them at once, and there's a risk. Chances are, well, when you see a client, most of them will turn into motor mouths when you ask them about the problem and go, blah, 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 and I had a problem here, and I had a problem there, and it happens everywhere, and this happened, and then that happened, God, I'm messed up, and then this, and then that, when I was 4 years old, and then my mama did this, and then this, oh, and by the way, I also have problems with this, right? They just go on and on and on and on and on. Your job really will be to stop that, so you have one specific moment in time, one specific context. And then once you have that, I mean, the memory still works. Your memory works fine, right? You can still think of like 100 different experiences where you had cats, and if you chuckle away to yourself quietly, we'll know what you're doing. But your memory works fine, and here's the important thing. You still know that back then, when you were a kid, it was a frightening experience, right? You just know that now it's just not a big deal. Right? It's not important, even though it was at the time, right? So it's not like I've changed your memory. You haven't changed your experience. It's not like I've put a weird memory in where you're sitting there high-fiving cats at the age of 5 years old.
Well, no, I definitely remember everything, but my feeling attached to those memories are actually gone as well.
And that's what we're doing, right? Later, when we get into regression, we'll show you how to do that with a different method. Because if you can't do it with language, chances are the emotion is so strong that regression will actually do that same thing. So this could have been a great example for doing regression work at the same time, but we just use a different pattern. So do you see how the patterns, the different things will achieve the same results? Ultimately, I think you can do everything with this, with the mind-bending language, everything. It's just a question of how skilled are you and how well can you sense the situation. That's all the thing that happens. Does that answer your question? There was someone else who was... Go ahead.
Do you find that, at least I do anyway, that most of the time when a person's talking to me about, like a phobia, like yesterday I was working with someone, or we were as a group, that was afraid of dentists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrified of dentists. I'm terrified of dentists. But unconsciously he told me exactly, I heard anyway, from my mind, what exactly was going on. Mm-hmm. Well, I can remember chewing gum before I go to the dentist, and if I went to the dentist, then I'd have cavities, and my mind went, well, I imagined that maybe he was afraid of being a bad boy, and so we kind of went there, kind of, well, maybe you're, and so I made some suggestions. Are you really afraid of dentists? Are you afraid of the pain that dentists may cause? And I kind of worked down, little by little, and hit that chord, and I imagine that this person has no more fear of dentist.
So is this someone you worked with in the past or someone in here?
Right here.
Okay. So in terms of what we're doing here, we're not actually doing regression. I don't care about what the point in time is that they choose. Mm-hmm. Whatever, it could be the last time they went to a dentist, that's what I'll work with. So as far as I'm concerned, if it needs to come up, it will come up, right? If you do regression work, though, you want to go to the very first initial event, and then we'll talk about that more this afternoon. So there's a difference in terms of strategy. Are you trying to just resource them, in which case any event will do? You don't have to find out why or when. Like, do you really know why you're afraid of cats? Do you really care? No, right? So there's no need for insight. What we're looking for is just the release at that point. Now, you could turn around and say, well, maybe it wasn't really the cats you're afraid of, it was the fear of the dark, and then the startling effect of a cat. It could have been anything. It could have been TV going on, and you've been scared of TV for the rest of your life, right? But it doesn't matter. It really does not matter why. What matters is that when he thinks of cats, what happens? Thank you very much. Right? Did you see what I mean by that?
I was just wondering if you had the same experience, so that people usually unconsciously drop the initial, the seed.
Often people come up with it. This is, again, Dave was a great example. I suspect that if that cat example wasn't necessarily the seed, then something very close to that experience, because the age range is about right, would have been it. And we got it, within 2 questions. So my belief is this. The unconscious mind will always tell you what you need to know in order to resolve the problem. It will always tell you at some point. Unless you don't have any rapport at all, in which case the person is going, how are you? I'm okay. What's going on? No, nothing. Right? Then it's only to like teenagers, and then you have nothing to actually work with. But provided you get into the work, whatever needs to come out will come out at some point, and I really believe that. So if it came up, then that's what needed to come up. Thank you.